or certificates of maintenance requirements. We'll be taking questions and answers. There's a mic here in the thing, so queue up for some questions and answers. We have to complete 1 hour in a session for you to get your educational credits. So get your questions ready, and Mr. Miller will have some time to answer those. So without any ado, let me please welcome Erin Miller, Chief of SATCOM, DISA.
Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for everybody braving and getting out here so early. When I first saw the schedule, I was very encouraged to come and speak until I saw the time was 8:15. Normally on conference days, I try not to show up before noon or maybe 10 o'clock at the earliest. But I think they know me, so that's why they put me down for 8:15 to force me to get here in the morning. An hour is a very long time. I could go through these slides probably 3 times in an hour. So really, it's going to be contingent to make this hour upon your questions. I love softball questions, even hard questions. But the way I would like to go through it, I'll cover a slide, and then at that point, if there's any questions about that content on that slide, feel free, and that way we can make it kind of interactive. It takes some of the pressure off of me and makes this enjoyable for all of us over the next hour. I thought about trying to tell a joke, but it's too early, so we'll just introduce myself. I'm Erin Miller. I'm Chief of the SATCOM Division at DISA. We in the Infrastructure Sustainment Directorate, working for Mr. Showers. In the SATCOM portfolio is Commercial SATCOM, Gateway, MilSATCOM, which is the DoD gateways, the 44 gateways spread around the globe, and EMSS. And in the very near future, Teleport Program Office. So it's a very key mission for DISA, and I'm encouraged and look forward to speaking to you guys about it today. So this morning we're going to talk about COMSATCOM, a lot of the activities going on with commercial SATCOM, and if you're in that realm, you know there is a lot of things going on with the pending AOA, the BCA that we're working, the Pathfinder's been working over the years. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about this as an expanding mission in support of airborne ISRs and the transport. And I'll try to get this to work. So where does this get pointed? Point it that way? Normally when a tech comes up, it works the first time they push the button, right? Sure enough, it did. Towards this way?
Yeah, so it's going this way.
Counterintuitive, right? Okay, just a presentation disclaimer. I'm not going to read through that, but I'll leave it up there for a minute, 1 hour. This is in all of the briefings. Everybody good? You sure? Okay, COMSATCOM overview. So the department relies on COMSATCOM to augment its MilSATCOM capabilities and supports a wide range of military operations. As you can see from airborne ISR, logistics, broadcast with services like GBS and DVRCS. Supports tactical operations, tactical reachback, humanitarian assistance, MWR, and other missions. The DoD doesn't have enough wideband SATCOM, and we augment that need through commercial. DISA's mission for commercial is to provide operationally responsive, customer-focused COMSATCOM services that enable joint warfighting. We've had that mission for about 10, 12 years now, and it's a key part of our portfolio. So our use of COMSATCOM has grown substantially since about 2001, 2002. It started out doing about $100 million to $200 million a year, and the high water mark was in 2011 when the department spent a combined $1.2 billion on FSS and MSS services. Unfortunately, 2011 is also the number used most often when characterizing the department's use of COMSATCOM. But as you can see from the chart, service has started to decline with our requirements. Our bandwidth requirements has been reduced by about 10% since then, and cost reductions actually are down about 30%. So it's starting to level off, even though the chart doesn't really show that. And a lot of that has to do with forced redeployments, some of the decreasing war efforts in Iraq and Afghanistan, and the market is driving down the price. With a little bit less requirement, we have seen better price points, which is good for the DoD. Any questions on this, the demand, the growth? I'm thinking about that hour. No? Typically, we do annual reporting every year where this puts together a report on all the expenditures for the department, and then it's being published by SATCOM. We coordinate all of the finding and data with the services to validate the numbers before it's published. So the numbers that you see here for FY14 are those validated numbers, and we're working on the FY15 report now. So we're starting to see some stability. It's not continuing to come down as the chart would indicate. We're starting to see a leveling off. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We do have it broken out by theater. I don't have the chart here with me today, but the annual SATCOM report breaks it out by service, by theater, by a lot of different ways. But what we are seeing is that while we saw greatest reductions in CENTCOM initially, but we saw a slight uptick again based on the ISIS and the activities there. And some of what we saw for the pricing, it wasn't so much that we were buying a lot less, it's that we were buying in different regions. There's a lot of cost drivers to the price of COMSATCOM. So it's more expensive in a highly used region, a condensed region like CENTCOM, and less expensive in CONUS. So if we move gigahertz from CENTCOM to CONUS, we're going to see a greater reduction in price, even though it might not be the same reduction in the amount that we're leasing. Yes, ma'am. Good. That's a good question. For those who didn't hear, the question is some of the requirement reduction in demand on commercial, is it related to an uptick in capability on MIL-SATCOM? We do see that when there is a new WGS satellite launch or where there's a change in user terminals, we do see some users canceling their lease and moving to WGS, but for the most part, the reduction, we can't really attribute a large portion to that. It's mostly the troop redeployment. But there is a lot of thought. We get that question a lot. It's anticipated that it will happen, but to date, it hasn't really happened. As you know, a lot of users, MIL-SATCOM is of choice. We want to use all our MIL-SATCOM first, but if your program doesn't have a MIL-SATCOM capable terminal, isn't certified to be on MIL-SATCOM, then they still have to continue to lease COMSATCOM. Chuck.
Chuck Cinnamon from Linquist. So, Erin, I'm seeing the downtick in the mobile service, and mobile implies that it's tied to a platform. And just touching on from what you were just saying, is some of that tied to troop redeployments? Is some of it part of the reduction in readiness, so that where you don't have as many platforms flying? So is this an area where, when readiness goes up, when spending maybe kind of evens off, we may see an increase in the mobile? Because like you said, if there's no new terminal for that platform, the only place that platform's going to go is back to commercial.
Well, the biggest decrease that we've seen in the mobile satellite service, MSS services, has been in our MRSAT services. Our EMSS Iridium services have remained pretty constant. We actually have more users of those, and it's probably linked directly to troop redeployment. Our MSS service is a per minute a billing, so the expenditures has to do with number of devices in the field, number of troops in the field, and how many minutes that they're using it. I'd say the high water mark in 2011 for MRSAT services was around $110 million, and today we're probably doing a neighborhood of $40 million, and that's probably the main cost driver on mobile service reductions. Okay, moving right along. So one of the things that we've been working the last couple years, one of the most important things, is our Pathfinder program. So our Pathfinder program came out of direction that was given in the FY14 Defense Planning Guidance. Basically, reflecting on the conclusions of numerous studies on DoD's large and enduring demand for commercial satellite communication services, the Defense Information System Agency and the Secretaries of the Military Departments, in coordination with the DoD CIO, AT&L, USDP, and CAPE, and the Commander of U.S. STRATCOM, will provide the Defense Space Council endorsed commercial SATCOM services alternatives to address physical, policy, and operational challenges, including specific Pathfinder activities that the DoD should undertake. So we developed a plan in coordination with the Air Force to try to figure out how we can do things differently. Spending, everybody's focused on that FY11 number, $1.2 billion, a lot of money in commercial. Is there any way we can do it more efficiently? Are we efficiently using what we buy? Is it mission supporting? Are there any other alternatives from industry that will enable us to get a better price point? Right? Are we using it? Can we share it better? Can we operationalize it better? So for the first time, after years of our focus being on supporting the warfighter and putting comms out there that support the warfighter, we started trying to look at the business aspects and how can we do it more efficiently and how can we do it better. So based on this guidance, we developed a plan that you're going to see on the next couple slides. Okay, so 10 Pathfinders were developed. 5 worked by the U.S. Air Force and 5 worked by DISA. As you can see, kind of a big picture, the DISA Pathfinders were kind of twofold in their goals. We were meant to try to look at what can be done in the short run for acquisition, because we do all the commercial leasing. And then we're also looking for base information that can inform all of the Pathfinders. We're trying to better understand our requirements. We're looking for alternative ways to procure. We're trying to ensure efficient utilization, and we're trying to look for better ways to operationally manage. A lot of this was happening in conjunction with the operational management discussions at STRATCOM. We started physically monitoring the bandwidth for the first time to try to find out if we are effectively using the bandwidth that we're buying. And we also tried to characterize what is the right number of utilization. Utilization is very complicated. Is it just your planned utilization that you're focused on? Do you plan to use it? Is it your spectral utilization? Is it the data utilization at the data level to ensure that it's mission supporting data and not just NIPRNet or MWR traffic? So we're doing a series of studies and analysis to answer those very questions. So as a department, if we're leasing 9 gigahertz worth of bandwidth, but we know through efficiencies that we're not fully utilizing it, we might be able to cut 5, 10, 15% off what we're buying simply by having a better ops tempo or simply by sharing better and having better utilization. It's not just focusing on trying to drive the price down. We're also looking at things we can do better to be more efficient. Right? You got 3 guys who live in the same neighborhood all driving from Northern Virginia to DISA, which is a pain if you ever had to do it. And if you carpool, you can better use your resources. But you might find you're on different schedules. One guy works days, one guy's ops guy works at night, and you might not be able to carpool. So we're investigating what can be done to gain efficiencies. Any questions on the Pathfinders? I don't have a whole lot of detailed slides, but we certainly have the time that we can go in more detail if you have a question about one of the specific Pathfinders. The Pathfinders are all ongoing. So we do continual analysis. We've got a lot of data. We've been monitoring, for example, on our utilization management Pathfinder D4 there. We've been monitoring about 40 to 50% of the bandwidth leased through DISA for around a year. And we learned a lot of lessons, but we haven't really shared all of that data yet. I mean, what we're seeing is trying to develop trends. So we have to break down all the data by mission type, make sure we have a representative sample, see if we have established trend, and then get a validated number for a particular mission. Let's say training. We have a lot of bandwidth we lease for training over in CONUS. So what is the right figure? What is the right number for utilization for that training bandwidth? If we're using 50% of it, is that fully utilized? Or should the number be higher? So we have to get a validated number. So now once we have those validated numbers, when we have a task order that is stated for training in CONUS that doesn't meet that threshold, we can re-engineer, we can regroom, we can work with the customer to hit those targets. But before we have those approved, validated targets, then it's very difficult to tell someone they have too much if there's no established threshold of that requirement. Does that make sense? So we're going to do this continually to try to. So initially, we think we'll get a big bang for our buck, and then we'll continue to evolve it, continue to work it, and continue to fine tune it, basically. Yes, ma'am. There will be a report to come out on the Pathfinder. What we're not going to do is we're not going to take all of the data for each individual user as a basically that this is customer and publish all their utilization like a big report for everyone to see. But we are going to we are working to publish the trends that we see that are not going to be attributed to any one customer. We're not trying to throw anyone under the bus. So it's not going to be the exact data, it's going to be the trends, if that makes sense. So we'll say what the utilization is on average across the board for a certain mission type, what we recommend be done, and where we recommend the threshold to be set, so to work with the Joint Staff and the DoD-CIO to get thresholds set. We're almost done. And if you'd asked me several months ago, I'd have said we're almost done. No, very soon. Very soon. We've kind of put it on a little bit to the back burner while we've been working the BCA and the AOA activities, but a lot of the lessons that we learned are being incorporated into the BCA as well as it'll come on AOA instructions. But by this summer, I anticipate a report on our DISA Pathfinder number 4 and DISA Pathfinder number 5. We because of acquisition challenges, we did not do a multi-year when we did not do an aggregated contract. It's very difficult. There are some barriers to us doing that. But we are working as part of immediate recommendation of DoD-CIO. We're making a recommendation of how we can do those very things, both for them to push it up the chain and we can get some movement on those Pathfinders. Also, the requirement analysis Pathfinder shouldn't be too far behind this summer, maybe fall by the end of the fiscal year. Because a lot of information from the other Pathfinders is what feeds that one. Yes, sir. Okay, did everyone hear the question? We might have to start using the microphone because I had a hard time hearing them with all the noise.
Okay, so the question is, Air Force Space Command and the Air Force in general is working on this this thing called the JICSPOC, for better situation awareness of the overall space fight. It seems like Pathfinder 4 and 5 would be, opportune and very important input for something like the JICSPOC to have that situation awareness. Are you working with them at all on that?
We are working with them on those efforts. To date, our Pathfinders have fallen a little outside of what they were trying to do, but we are supporting the fighting SATCOM and working to get better situation awareness. Basically, where the approach is better understand our requirements and try to basically push down money. Regardless of how we procure it, regardless of what savings, we're always going to have to operationalize it and work with the Air Force Space Command and JICSPOC to do so. But our focus right now has been informing acquisition decisions. Was there another question? Yes, sir.
Hey, Aaron. Paul Freese of Lynchburg. Question about D3. How likely, going for multi-year service contracts, how likely of a reality that is, or what types of things you're exploring as a way to reduce? I'm assuming you're doing that as a way to reduce costs on a per megahertz basis.
Right. So, as you know, we've done a multi-year for EMSS, but it was a little bit of a different scenario there. I think this is something that the department is looking at really seriously. It really is. I mean, we hear all the time that buying from the spot market or buying year-to-year leasing does not produce the best price points for the department. And our own analysis shows that. But we also know with anything that's market-driven, buying long-term at the wrong time also doesn't produce the right price point. It wouldn't have been a good idea, I guess, 4 years ago to commit to 10 years worth of fuel pricing because the cost of fuel has dropped and you might be stuck to a higher price. So what we're trying to do is figure out, by better understanding our requirements, the right places, the right requirement to go after a multi-year, to make a commitment, an investment-based purchase, whether that's something over CONUS. I don't think the country's moving anytime soon. or whether that's something that we know is stable. It would have been great to do a long-term lease over the Middle East in 2002. Perhaps it's not the best investment to make today. So yes, there are some barriers to doing it. There's some language that precludes us for service-type contracts for going beyond 5 years, even going 5 years. But the department is serious about looking at this. So I think it's pretty reasonable to assume we're going to get something done. Yes, sir.
Dave Fritz Miter. I was wondering where in the structure of the Pathfinders are you looking at the next generation commercial satellite technologies where you're going to see massive increases in capacity per satellite and reduced cost per bit?
Well, I'm not specifically a Pathfinder. Part of what my office does is continually try to understand industry and the market by doing continual market research and looking for the next solution and see if it has military utility. So while it's not specifically called out in the Pathfinder, we are definitely cognizant of the new high-throughput satellites and new managed service models that are coming out that we think could be game changers for the industry. So we're always tracking that.
Hi, Charles Renner. Following along the same lines, a lot of talk about efficiency and possibility of high bandwidth in the future. Are there any unserved needs from commercial with respect to things that, if you could have them, you'd love to have them, but they're really not there? Is it high throughput? Is it geography? I mean, if you could guide the commercial industry to what they should build in the future, what would you point them to?
That's a tough question. Free bandwidth for the Department of... No, just kidding. The DoD needs... We need wideband SATCOM communications. We need it to be mission secure. We need it to be in compliant with CNSSP 12, uplink and downlink encryption. We have to figure out how we fully leverage managed services so we can move data securely between your networks and our networks. And we need a culture change and a comfort level to do so. We need to make sure that we focus on putting the right missions on the right solution and develop solutions that aren't necessarily one size fits all. What really helps us from industry standpoint is just knowing more about what you're doing, your innovations. It's a big part of it. And also being the data side, the data portion of it, being able to appear at the network level. Because even if you put out and do a huge investment in your global managed service, if the business model doesn't match up with a DoD user base traveling securely within that data but being segregated and then offloading to a DoD network securely, if that's not built in up front, it's difficult to kind of do it on the back end. So, and I don't want to get into trouble. So, Vinny's mentioned CIR having robust committed information rates, things of that nature. But that's a tough question. We've been trying to figure out how do we change the culture to fully leverage managed services for a while. Hopefully I gave a good answer because I struggle with that one. Go ahead, Ambush.
Yes, Aaron. When you're going up, struggling, with working on a business case model, and you have users that have high availability requirements that require cooping, don't you? To manage risk properly, that when you have let's say cooped bandwidth, it's not being used, but it has to be there. And you're paying for it, but you can't make a business case, I think, to take it out because when you need it, it won't be there.
You're absolutely right. There are some mission requirements. Whether we lease a lot of bandwidth as terrestrial backup. We've had some cable cuts in the past, and we needed that SATCOM bandwidth when the terrestrial wasn't available. So What's your utilization rate on the backup? What's the threshold? What's the right ratio? What's the right amount to have in backup? Well, these are very complex issues, and these are all things that have to be taken in consideration with what the commander believes on the ground, the network resiliency. We have to look at all of that. Same thing, what's your utilization for your UAV when they're on the ground? Are they underutilizing it because there was no mission to fly it right at that very moment? So we understand these are very complex issues, and we're not trying to that's why we're trying to look at it by mission type, what it's serving, what it's supporting. So if we've been buying backup commercial bandwidth for 6-7 years and we've never had an incident, what is that right level of risk? What is it worth? If we had a contingency process to maybe get a surge in 72 hours, is that better for the department than to lock it up and buy it continually? What are the risks of that? It might not be available when you need it. So these are very complex issues, and we're not taking we're taking it very seriously and trying to look at it broadly, because one size fits all, it's not going to be good for the department. Yes, sir.
Mike Haggard, DISAF commander. So when you start talking about risk, you have to get commanders involved. Not necessarily me, but you're talking about the operational commanders, especially in AFRICOM, AISR, and those platforms are heavily dependent on. So how can we help with that risk calculation? How can we help with that? What will the commander pay for to help mitigate that risk?
A very good question, sir. So what we're trying to come up with is the methodology and the decision points that we will have to have those conversations. So the Pathfinders are going to develop thresholds and kind of develop like the formula and the methodology. Because for each individual requirement, you're exactly right. It's the commanders on the ground. It's the COCOM. It's working with folks from your office or to make sure we have the right level of risk capture. And once we outline it, we might find out, you know what, it's worth the risk. We're going to go ahead and pay for it and keep that bandwidth in demand because it's very painful if we don't. Right? So what we're trying to do is set up what the formula is, not necessarily what the answers are to the question. Let me move on before y'all ask me another question. Okay, so quickly, if you're familiar with COMSATCOM, basically we have overarching service contracts are maintained by DISA. We use Schedule 70 in a partnership with GSA. We have our transponder capacity is on SIN 132-54. Managed services are 132-55 for your pre-engineered by-month, by-megabit service. And we have custom end-to-end solution IDIQs, CS2. Those are reaching end of life, and there's actually a recompete effort for those. So I won't be taking any questions about the follow-on to CS2, okay? We see those vehicles as still being viable. There's like 15 years left on the schedule. And like I said, we're recompeting the IDIQ. That's the follow-on from the old DSTSG contract. We have in the high 30s of vendors on the schedules. And we anticipate 8 to 10 awardees on the IDIQ. Any questions about the contracts? We don't see any change in this. It's been this way for several years. No near future changes expected. Okay. So this slide depicts our activities that we're working for the optimum mix of COMSATCOM and MIL-SATCOM. So we were tasked this year in Section 1611. The tasking prescribes the AOA. And pre-AOA activities include this RMD task to DISA and the Air Force to work a BCA and define the optimum mix. And there's some other language about military utility and a few other things. So what we've been working on is try to figure out what is the formula, what's the right methodology to determine that optimum mix. Previously, the department's position has been that we will fully utilize our wideband SATCOM WGS because we made a substantial investment in that capability. Well, moving forward, what is that right mix? How much of it should be purpose-built? How much of it should be spot leased? How much of it should be maybe buying a commercial high-throughput satellite and any other alternative means of procuring? So we're coming up with a methodology to do so that's focused on those 5 points you see there. What we're doing in the BCA actually encompasses 1 through 4, but we're using a notional decision. and then the actual decisions will be made in the AOA. So once again, this is what is the methodology, what is the formula, and it's basically, spoiler alert, it has to do with your demand. When you can confidently project your demand, you can make a better informed acquisition decision and a better investment. And there's also thresholds. If you know your demand is less than a gigahertz, is it really smart to lease a high throughput satellite and hang it over that region? Because you have a lot of unused capacity for a lot of years. And if you know your command is in the realm of what can be satisfied for a high throughput satellite, is it really the best decision to continue to do year-to-year leasing? So that's what we're trying to crack. Any questions on this? I'm probably going to get in trouble for this, but this was not the last version of the slides, but that's quite all right. The quad chart had been removed, but that's okay. I think it looks good. We're just going to go with it here. So on the quads, what you see, challenges and opportunities. Our governmental challenge is an industry opportunity for innovation and find a solution to help us make it through that challenge. And as you can see, some of your questions about managed service and other things ended up on this slide. Number one, how do we reduce costs for COMSATCOM service for the department? What are our innovative bandwidth solutions? How can we use managed services as a service? What are our innovative ideas? Is it MEO? Is it high throughput satellites, managed services? Is it that? Is it a more efficient modem? Is it a more efficient terminal? What technology changes on the horizon are going to greatly reduce the demand or the cost of bandwidth services for the department? I guess going clockwise, improvements in bandwidth, oversight of leased bandwidth. What we're finding by our monitoring is we have some customers that aren't effectively utilizing their bandwidth. How can industry help us with regrooming? How can we work some kind of maybe a sharing of that savings so that everybody wins? How can we monitor that? Should the department put the capability in place organically, or could this be a service that industry provides to say, we've been monitoring we've been looking at your usage, and we think it'd be more efficient, and we can save a tenth or save a third on your bandwidth cost. What incentives are needed to do that? If you're reselling that bandwidth, you have a disincentive to do that. How can we incentivize you to help us manage our bandwidth better? More flexible pricing models. What other kind of pricing can you put on your schedule that's more flexible, that gives us a better price point? Some of these things, obviously, we have some things to overcome, such as with the long-term leasing or global leasing. And some of these being explored, if you're working with Joe V at all, these are some of the same questions he's trying to get at. How can we do things differently? You see improve and user ends understanding of requirements. Is there another way to do forecasting? Forecasting of what the demand's going to be, forecasting of what maybe our requirements going to be. Is there another smarter way, a better mousetrap tool to forecast demand? Because right now that's one of the things we struggle in. Whether we're doing scenario-based or we're doing a usage or stochastic model, we really have to understand our requirements in order to make a longer-term investment. Any questions on this? Then next, we're going to move into our airborne ISR portion of this. Yes, ma'am.
Morning, Erin. Amy Gwynn, Altisat. So a lot of the examples you just gave there about cost savings and improving this stuff all had to do with a post-award type of situation. You're talking about regrooming, sharing cost savings, stuff like that. Here's a little bit of a softball question, because I know I've asked you this before in previous meetings. What is DISA doing from an acquisition side to try to capture this up front when it's going through the competitive process? Because obviously the way the requirements are written in order to baseline an even opportunity for everybody to pursue is going to limit a lot of this innovation or these out of the box thinking kind of models in order for you guys to evaluate us equitably. So what kind of steps are you guys taking to introduce that?
Well, the main thing we're trying to do is making sure we solicit for requirements and not solutions. So if we go out and say, I want to buy transponder of KU, we're going to get KU solutions. But if our users have quad-band terminals, we should write our requirements as such that we're open to more innovative solutions. We have to write our requirements to enable you to provide innovative solutions that we might not have thought of. And a lot of times, I guess we need to do more RFIs. We need to understand better what the things you're capable of so that we don't just stay comfortable and continue to do things the way we've always done it. For example, if there's when these new service capabilities come on, our first thought is, wow, how do we buy that? What's the business model? Right? And a lot of times it's waiting on industry to adjust, and it's hard for us to be early adopters because we have to see that there's established pricing, established models, someone else is buying it, and then we feel more comfortable going out and buy it. But we really have to break our requirements down, understand what's out there, and write them in a way that enables industry, a more of a SU-like model than a SAL model. Allow industry to propose innovative solutions to an end state. And we really have to get better at doing that. Okay. Moving along. Another one of the newer missions that this SATCOM has been supporting is airborne ASIR. We provide the transport from manned and unmanned aerial platforms to UVDS and other locations and uses. UVDS is the Unified Video Dissemination Service. It provides storage of video and streaming video for user mission requirements. So those things we're going to talk about and go over in the briefing. UVDS and our airborne ASIR mission. Now, I would ask you probably not to ask hard questions on this because I'm not as adept at this area, but I do have help in the room if necessary. Mr. Bob Willett is the PM for these programs. He's in the back. So you can ask him afterward the hard question. Okay, this ASR and UVS video. So what you see here, this is a global service. There are over 270 unique feeds. It's full motion video. The warfighter signs up on the servers and subscribes to these different feeds. The information is sent from the UAVs, downlinked into the gateway, cached at the deck facilities and the UVS servers, and then users can sign up and stream those. There's even live streaming. If there's an area for certain mission tests, you can see the live stream. So it integrates, there's a lot of integration there with the IC community and SOCOM. They're leaders in that. We work a lot with AFRICOM and CENTCOM on these requirements. They're the main drivers right now. Okay. High level over one is of kind of what we're dealing with here. You can see that from the tactical edge, the data, it goes full circle. There's users out there with the UAVs, originate the data, comes down through the gateways, through SATCOM, it goes to UVDS servers, it works across the DISN from RPAs, all kind of ISR, and it actually go full circle where the guy at the edge can subscribe to and see that data from another location. It provides, and you can see it on the bottom, provides ubiquitous access to ISR and full motion video worldwide to and from the cloud. Any questions on the basics of UVS? The cloud. This is cloud. The DoD's cloud. Yeah, the DoD network cloud. Am I on the wrong one? And here's some highlights of the support that we provide. As you can see, we have a 24/7 operations cell. There's a service called RPA Chat where there's text messages. It's going across the DoD, so there's global transport situation awareness. We coordinate for ASIs. We have a dedicated LNO working with the Air Force, the 624th. We have physical diversity and COOP capability on the service. And right now, to take credit for our success, our uptime rate is 99.96% on this service. And this is a rapidly growing service, which you're going to see on a slide coming up here. This is just some screenshots of what you can see on the system if you log into the system. It's a web-based dissemination. If you see, it provides a COP, it provides archival, search and retrieval. It has access control, dashboarding, streaming, so you can go back and look for old information or as well as subscribe for current, like I said, current live feeds. All right, so this eye chart was a little confusing to me at first, okay? But if you look at all of the blue bars, that was last year, and FY14 actually. And then the red bars the same month, and what the growth was in FY15. So you can see in January, we went from 68,000 to 267,000 accesses. So this was a huge demand, a huge jump in demand for this service. So this is definitely a prime service used by the warfighter. Overall, in FY15, we had 1.5 million accesses and over almost 3 million hours of viewing of these streams. Once again, here's a challenge and opportunities. So right now, there are 2 servers in CONUS that host this information. So the information is coming all the way around the world, and it has to come back to CONUS. And there's latency, there's other issues. So we're pushing it out by having a European accentuation and then evolve into a PAC accentuation. So this has basically grown into a full global capability and service provided by the agency. As you can see, we view this as a game changer, and there's some opportunities for industry to help us. What are some better ways, better models for doing data sharing of this type with caching? What future technologies will enable us to do this more efficiently, enable us to do this a little better, maybe more cost effective. You can see some of the things, what codexes are coming that's going to maybe allow video to be digitized more efficiently. That's a big one. Whether that, I mean, we don't really do a lot of stuff with the broadcast industry, but I know the broadcast industry is always looking at better ways to digitize video. We don't always get them at the DoD conferences, but industry knows about it. What are those solution sets that can make us do this more efficiently? What can be done on the platforms? Instead of just worrying about the transport, what can be done on our airborne ASIR platforms to make us more efficient? What technology changes are necessary there? They're coming up to the point they're going to be tech refreshing some of these terminals. What should we be looking to do? Those are the kind of influence we need from industry to support this capability. I am so glad no one asked any questions on airborne ASIR. Oh, here we go. Yes, sir.
Hopefully this is a softball question either for you or Bob. And I think I know the answer, but I think it would be useful for everybody else in the room to another opportunity or another challenge is sharing information with our multinational partners, our interagency partners. There's a vignette out there about one of our country teams down on the continent that was watching UVDS, saw something about to happen to one of that country's military forces, shared the information with the MOD and saved that platoon. So how can industry help us with more of that type of sharing to make that more real time with our multinational partners?
That's an excellent point and an excellent question, sir. We're doing a lot of work. This is doing a lot of work in multinational, and I believe our PM from MNIS is speaking at one of these forums this morning. We have to figure that out, which streams that we can make available to have a coalition, maybe portal for UVDS, a coalition accentuation. How do we crack that nut in order to do so? And you're right. Obviously, when you got to take 270 streams, each one, we're not the owner of those streams. So if it's one that is proper to be shared with our coalition partners and which ones, we have to figure that out. I mean, but I could see that as definitely a place where we can grow this service to have a coalition model. Bob's giving me the thumbs up, so I guess that was a decent answer. Any other questions on anything that we talked about? Here he comes. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Robert Willett.
That actually was a good softball question. So one of the things with BICES, with the actual coalition partner sharing, you brought up an excellent point, was the fact that they already do have the actual model in place for metadata tagging for all video streams. One of the issues is what do we do, because they haven't enforced that metadata tagging, so obviously the CDS cross-domain solutions can't export those data streams to the correct people yet. So that's where industry can help us, is how do we go ahead and actually make sure as the video, like Erin said, you saw there's a tremendous number of data fields that come in. So the challenge is for the people as they get the fields or get the video feeds or the captures in, they have to accurately tag them so then they can be shared correctly to the right partners. Someone also has to update the CDSs at the right time to make sure that the data can then go to the right partners in as expeditious a manner as possible. So there's a lot of issues there that I'm pretty sure industry, I mean, I'm not going to name a name of certain companies, but I'm pretty sure if you have a profile or an account, if you haven't paid your bill, you're not going to be able to view certain content. This is essentially the segregation or the mechanism to separate video feeds to various countries or various trusted partners, okay? So that's what we're looking at.
Thanks, Bob. So basically, we need to figure out how to tag that data, do the metadata tagging, so we can properly segment and share the data that needs to be shared. And in this case, it's the video. Any other questions, or someone want to discuss anything that we talked about today? I think this is what we got. What 9 minutes? Woo. Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if you'll have the answer, Mr. Willett will have it, but you had mentioned back in a previous graphic there, you had showed that the gateways for the UBDS service, how many of those gateways exist, and what is the criteria for putting a site into the network?
Do you mean the SATCOM gateways?
Yeah, how many of those are out there today supporting the UBDS?
Well, right now we only have it's part of the gateway program. So right now there's only a couple SATCOM gateways that we have this capability in, because we're the airborne ISR transport. We have 44 global gateways, 12 large, but not all of them have the airborne ISR ground equipment in them. There's only a handful, but we expect that to grow and expand over the next few years.
And all of them are government managed and operated?
Yes, all of them are government managed gateways, and more than likely it's going to be the large gateways. So the 12 large, which is actually like 16 sites that make up 12 large gateways, vice the remaining small gateways.
And are you guys able to achieve complete global coverage for that?
Oh, absolutely.
ISR mission?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any more questions? No? Anybody besides Ambush have a question? No, go ahead.
Erin, since DISA develops the tagging standard, do you have a DISA tagging standard for the XML that you're going to be using?
No, I do not know. No, I would say probably not. A lot of this is just industry standards for this. But get with Bob after. That's one of the other things we're constantly struggling between enforcing the MIL standard and adopting proper commercial standards. So, yes, ma'am.
Hi, Amber Korn with Sleep ISR Networks. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the demand signal that you're getting from the ground, from the troops on the ground, a little bit kind of lower down the chain of command. Can you talk about, particularly for airborne ISR?
Well, we haven't really broken down the segment of the demand that you saw in the other chart to know if it's from lower down or closer to the foxhole or not. We've seen a huge growth in demand across the board. But we haven't broken down the data to that level to know whether it was driven from, the platoon level or the foxhole level, or driven from the command level. Not at this point.
Have you had opportunities to get direct feedback from people that are closer to the ground?
Well, we're in constant conversation with the leaders at the COCOM level, at the service level, but it's very difficult to have much. This is a new service, so we don't have surveys that go out or things of that nature as of yet. Most of the coordination has been driven at the more senior level as far as this service and capability.
Thank you.
Okay.
Ma'am, I'm not sure if this is going to actually answer your question, and I don't have access to a lot of the data that can drive that demand. I'll just offer another vignette. So we have guys that are down on the continent that are trying to reach back to DISA for enterprise services, such as enterprise email, such as defense collaboration services, such as GBS. So that demand is driving a bigger increase or more of an increase in what we need as far as MilSatCom, COMSATCOM to reach back for those types of services. There is no longer really not much of an opportunity to carry your servers forward with you. You have to reach back to get those basic types of services. So that's driving some of the demand. There's also what also drives that is when you're talking about something like DCS, and those guys are talking to their higher headquarters in Vicenza or in Stuttgart. They really do want to have those real-time services work properly without audio delay, without video delay, and so those are some of the challenges we see for not only for SATCOM itself writ large, but driving those services down to the warfighter, down into the foxhole, so to speak. The other AISR, from my perspective, I see AISR, that demand growing, especially on Africa because of how we're fighting that fight. And the commander does not want to put a large amount of infrastructure, U.S. infrastructure, on the continent itself. So that's going to drive more demand for SATCOM as well. Bob, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the remote management piece, and if there's a way the industry could help us with that as well in the few minutes we have left.
I'll handle your question in a minute, sir. I think that's an ideal thing. But Erin, if you could go back probably about 2 or 3 slides. So I think I'd like to answer or expound on your question because it's a good question. One more. Back. That's why UVS works. I'm just joking.
Right there?
One more. I want the picture that has the picture with the man-unmanned vehicles. This one. So what's important is the sensor data actually comes in from the left side, okay? And it's basically a lot of raw data. That comes into the UVS, but it's also multicast down to user PEDs and other sensor cells that will evaluate the information. What happens then is GBS and other broadcast methods send the information out to those same users or to other users that subscribe to the UVS feeds or other feeds, okay? So it's important to understand, we pull in the raw information to UVS and other places. Users can get that from the UVS portals or from their own, sometimes multicast directly to headquarters, IC, whatever. I'm not going to get into it too much. And then they evaluate it, do the actual analysis, and then the information can then be broadcast back out. So that's why the tagging is essential, because then you want to either get the raw feeds or you may want to get the process information to make a decision on it, okay? So the control mechanism is interesting from a commercial aspect because we have a few operational cells out there. We're teaming very closely with some of the vendors, but we're always looking for improvement, and we're actually this week We're actually looking at one of the people we team with some of the people with the modems, is actual control or actual, what do I want to say, monitoring of the actual feeds that are coming through all those modems globally. And so that's being stood up and being tested even right now. So that's some of the places where industry can help us, is not only in that, but how we parse the data to give the correct coup for the actual operational picture. Okay. Since I'm standing up here, are there any other questions? Okay.
Look at that. We done made it an hour. Thank you.
Give Ms. Miller one more round of applause here. Thank you for your remarks and your comments, sir. They're greatly appreciated. For those in the audience, don't forget to go see the individual in the back. Get your badges tagged for your credit. Again, thank you, Mr. Miller. Great remarks. Thank you.